All right, how you guys doing? Thanks for coming out to the patio. I know it's a long walk, long awkward walk to come back here. Thanks for joining us out here. This is security education. I feel like this is one of the problems in our industry that hasn't really had an elegant solution applied to it. I'm not here to give you one, but I'm here to show you some big problems I've seen and kind of how we've solved some of those problems. But first, who I am, I'm Kris. I am the manager of the Risk Compliance and Application Security team at Highland Software. I'm a co-founder of CleveSec. I am a board member on NeoISF with Dave here, and I sometimes help out contributing for OWASP Cleveland, speaking, helping them get venues and stuff like that. So I'm quite around in the Cleveland area. If you haven't been to any of these, definitely come check them out. They all have different vibes and they all have different audiences and different groups that show up regularly, so definitely worth checking them all out. Please come by. So, we're only as strong as our weakest point. I think we all know this being kind of a universal point. This is something that we all understand, especially in InfoSec. This is not really, InfoSec is no exception to this, I think we all know. Hands up if you've heard this phrase said out loud by somebody. There's no patch for human stupidity. Pretty much people say this probably. Hands up if you actually said this to somebody. Yeah. What about this one? Have you heard this one? Training the users is actually a waste of time and our resources. Hands up if you heard that one said by somebody. Hands up if you've actually said that one, though. That's the important one. Good. I want to see less hands on that one. Actually, the big one for this was, I think, fall of last year. Bruce Schneier actually put something out saying that he was now in the camp saying that training our users is kind of a waste of time, and there are better ways to spend our time and resources, and I definitely don't agree with that. I feel like that's actually probably our most important part of being an InfoSec professional. I feel like Kris Nickerson kind of stole my thunder up there saying that, but it's true. I agree with him. If you are kind of ignoring this skill, if you're thinking, hey, our users are stupid, they always will be, it's just something we have to live with, it's because you're kind of letting them be. It's your responsibility. If your users are bad at their jobs, it's kind of your fault. So, we're going to walk through 10 reasons your security education program sucks. But you know what? You're here now. We're going to walk through it together. We're going to fix it. We're going to get some tips. We're going to have some conversations. I'm probably not going to walk the whole hour of this, so I'm hoping we can spark some conversation at the end of this and get some things going. It's actually a big part of my job to build education programs. The big piece of security I do at Highland is training our developers and QA staff up on basic security practices, how to make our applications more secure, where they're going wrong, how to do their jobs more securely. It's a big part of my job, and then working with these other groups, I've had quite a bit of experience in that area. An area we've really seen this work well is Microsoft, obviously. We all know that even 10 years ago, Microsoft was kind of the laughingstock of this industry. They were always on the front page when it came to a new vulnerability, new exploit. But then they had their giant culture shift. Bill Gates put out the Trustworthy Computing memo saying computing should be as reliable as utility. And they brought their .NET department offline to train them up on security. Since then, they've been just increasing year over year, and it's working great. So let's get into the first reason behind this. These are all kind of reasons that I've seen our own systems fail, because we have gone through several iterations of these, and I've seen other people's systems fail. The first one being you don't care enough, but you expect your users to. I feel like this is actually the number one reason. You guys are all here right now, so I'm going to assume you don't have this problem, but let's walk through it anyway. Every year, I come to these security conferences, and I hang out on Twitter, and I see the blog posts, and it's all security professionals bitching about these, right? Oh, we have these compliance standards we have to keep track of. They're a pain in the ass, and our managers only understand security as far as the compliance will allow them, and security is not compliance. But then what they do is they take their training programs and go only up until the compliance standard. So they complain about how they can't get any funding past what the compliance standard is, but then when it comes time to actually train their users on this kind of thing, they only go to the standard, see what they have to do so that their organization can't get sued, and kind of stop there. So I feel like that's a major disconnect. Why are we pursuing security from an education standpoint based on compliance when we aren't willing to do it at the application level, at the network level, or with ourselves? I feel like it's kind of a race to see who can get away with interacting with their users the least, who can kind of get up on stage and give their prepackaged presentation and head back to the NOC and put their heads back down, or send out an email, or send out the document that needs to be acknowledged. It's a race to the bottom and something we shouldn't be really endorsing. Even worse, they send their users something like this. This is PCI, but it's an excellent example. This is 112 pages. They're sending this to their user. Go ahead and read this by Tuesday or whatever. Make sure you sign the document saying that you read it or acknowledge it in the system. What's the bare minimum we can do from the auditors, stopping the auditors to be suspicious when they come in? Or worse, we download some sort of education program. We buy some education program. We don't even review it. Just know this is a system that we're purchasing. Send it off to the users. Hope that they understand everything. And we got the acknowledgments back. So there's our metric. We know this many people signed, so we must be good. These are all the marks of someone who doesn't care. If you are sending large documents like this off to your users, if you are buying stuff off the shelf without reviewing it, it just shows how little you care about actually your users understanding these things. There's a quote attributed to Woody Allen, who knows how true it is, but showing up is 80% of life. I feel like we're kind of there. I love saying to my team that when they're creative people, they like to reinvent the wheel sometimes. But sometimes we have solved problems, you know. I love saying to them, guys, this is a solved problem. This is done. This is something we don't have to worry about anymore. Implement this solution, find out a way to make it work for us, and it's done. I don't think security education falls into that category. I don't think security education is a solved problem by any means. But there are people working on it. This community is working on it. I'm one of the people working on it, and I want to thank you all for being here because it shows that you're actually interested in working on it to some extent. The first step to showing that you care is just showing up, honestly. So, good job there. Getting involved, another thing you guys are already doing here. So we mentioned all those groups. If you are in the Cleveland area, check some of those out. I'm sure wherever you are, there's groups that you can get involved in. Find out what other people are doing. Anybody that's working security in an enterprise situation has some sort of education responsibility. Find out what they're doing to do that in their enterprise. Are they sending documents off to get acknowledged? Or do they have some sort of education plan in place? Are they working to build something from scratch? Do what you can, contribute to their ideas, steal their ideas, copy their ideas, doesn't matter. Just as long as you're not sitting still and letting this kind of problem exist until somebody hopefully solves it someday, it shows that you care. So, problem number 2, your managers don't care enough. So this is a big problem, but we also have to be careful because this can easily also become an excuse. There's a difference between something being a reason that we can't move forward and the excuse why we haven't moved forward. Anybody who says that they can get by without buy-in from the top on an initiative like this, something where you're shifting the culture of the entire company, is fooling themselves. You can definitely start off, you can get some things rolling, you can kind of prove yourself valuable, but completing this will never happen. The reason for this is that people take cues from their managers, people take cues from their leaders, so we have to convince those at the top as well at the bottom. This is something that I personally learned the hard way when we first started our security program at Highland. Security had nothing to do with my job when we started it. We kind of did this grassroots movement where we found a couple people who were interested, spending some time getting them up on some basic skills, but we were all kind of pretty low on the totem pole. We couldn't affect change. None of us were in a position to walk into a VP or a CEO's office and say, this needs to change, this needs to happen. It wasn't even part of our job responsibilities, let alone had we put together some kind of coherent program or had we shown any sort of results. We ran into this problem really quickly. We found that no matter how interested and passionate and effective we are at this low level, grassroots movements can only go so high. The people at the top, the trees, can always shut this kind of thing down anytime that they want to. No matter how successful you get on your own, you'll always have people subverting your efforts at a higher level if you don't have buy-in at every level. When managers don't care about your systems, when they don't care about an initiative that's happening in your organization, they will show that to their people, and when their people see it, they will take it as a license to do the same. If your managers aren't showing excitement, if they're showing apathy, if they're one of these, well, security guys are doing this thing, so I guess we have to go along with it, they just gave a license to everyone that they talked to that it was okay for them to kind of half-ass the system, right? So we want people involved, we want people effective, we want people excited about this kind of thing. Attitude reflects leadership. So you need to kind of work on your skills at the executive level. I know that this has been said at hundreds and hundreds of talks. It's extremely true. You need to talk about money. You need to talk about what we can do to make them money, what we can do to make sure they don't lose money, how can we save money. Let's talk about litigation. We have compliance standards we all have to adhere to. We have customers that might end up taking us to task for certain shortcomings in our security. And even if we don't get as far as litigation, we have loss of reputation, we have angry customers. That's something every executive wants to avoid. Guys, just take some time in Excel and like put one of these together. Look how simple this is. The one we showed our executives wasn't even half as complex as this risk chart. It's honestly, everyone knows executives love charts. It's a stereotype, but it's true. Up here, all we have is likelihood and impact. All you have to do is show them these things and place a few events on it and show them what can be the impact of these things, what can happen to the organization if these things happen, and how likely is it that these things will happen. And oh, by the way, I have a solution to stop that from happening. And then finally, you need to move on the positive side too. Show them how you can make them into a bit of a rock star. You can show them like how many other executives do you think are handling this kind of thing. When you go talk to other executives, and executives do talk to other executives, how many of them are going to know what you're talking about when you start going on about this new application security program that you're putting together? Your team showed you this great thing. You're going to make these other people jealous. You're going to be the leader in this kind of thing. We joke about being a thought leader, but executives relish it. Talk about Gartner, talk about Forrester, talk about whatever metrics your organization cares about. Make them fit into your security model. Talk to the people that can. And make it easy to say yes. Do as much work up front as you can. The less work that your executives have to do, the more likely they are to go along with your plans. When we were first doing this, I actually wrote a full-on memo that was kind of inspired by the Trustworthy Computing memo, saying, these are the things we're going to do in security going forward. These are the advantages it's going to give us in the marketplace. These are the things our competitors are not doing. And I think it was kind of a rallying cry around security. And I just presented it to our CEO, and I asked him if he would send it just under his letterhead. All he had to do was take this document that was already done, copy it, paste it, and send it, or even have his administrator or his assistant do it. He didn't have to do anything. I made some promises in the document. I made some claims. He was interested enough to actually read it before he stamped his name to anything like that. And it forced him to ask questions. What do you mean by we're going to have these training classes? What do you mean by we are beating this area out in the marketplace? What are the numbers to back these things up? So because he had to ask these questions in order to maintain his own credibility, it gave me an opportunity to kind of shove more information in that he would not have otherwise solicited. And honestly, he didn't end up sending that memo, but he ended up going on this really long speech, this really long tangent at the latest managers meeting that was probably about 10 minutes long. So every manager in the company heard him go on this long rant about security. A lot of stuff inspired by the memo I gave him. And now he's one of our greatest champions and kind of remains so. So that's a powerful ally to have. And yeah, it's a lot of work. When I make these claims, I had to have the numbers to back these things up. I had to have plans in place for potential areas we might want to grow into. I had to have data about our customers and data about our competitors. And it was a lot of work, but that goes back to showing that you care. If you care about getting this kind of thing done, then you will do the work because you want to make it easy as possible for the people in charge to say yes. Third reason that your security program sucks. You don't speak the language of the users, and then you're frustrated when they just nod politely at you, especially when you ask questions. Does anybody have any questions at the end? And it's very silent because, yeah, they have a lot of questions, but they're not going to ask you. either one, they don't care, or they don't want to sound stupid in front of a room full of their peers, or they didn't understand anything that just happened, and they're not going to be the person that says, can you repeat everything that you just said? That's not going to happen. I think we lose sight of how hard this stuff is. One of my vice presidents called InfoSec the most difficult intellectual pursuit out there today. I think that's overblowing it quite a bit, but we all do know how tough this job is. We go to these conferences, we read the news every day, we're active on social media, just to stay kind of at an average level in this industry. I don't know any other industry that has to do that kind of thing just to stay run-of-the-mill. We forget all that stuff that we had to do. Not to mention the 100 hours of training that we put ourselves through, that we go through at conferences, that we pay for out of our own pocket, that we pay for through the company. We do an incredible amount of work, and I think sometimes we start taking that for granted. Who knows what academic creep is? Anybody? Academic creep is basically the concept that once you get to a certain level of knowledge, you see everything that you don't understand far in the distance and kind of start feeling dumb for it. You realize all these new things that you didn't realize were actually out there. Now you have more questions than answers, and you assume that everyone else knows these answers because, I don't know, psychology, I suppose. But then what happens is everybody that we interact with, we assume that they have the same level of knowledge we do. So when we start to explain things to them, we do it from the baseline that we live in. We do it from the point of assuming that they understand what all these acronyms mean. They understand how different systems interact with each other, what the consequences are of certain actions. The struggle is real, yeah. But the truth is, they don't know any of that stuff. And again, they're not going to be, most people are not going to be forward enough to tell you that they don't understand anything you just said. Can you back up? Can you say it simpler? Because they don't want to sound stupid, right? We're afraid of sounding stupid by bringing our language down too much or offending them by dumbing our content down. But they're also just as afraid. They don't want to seem dumb to the tech people who are always controlling their lives. One of my favorite analogies about this actually came from Kris Nickerson a few years ago. I'm not sure where he gave the talk. But he said something like, it's like me giving you a book and saying, I need you to read this book. I need you to get this done. And you say, okay, no problem. And you look at the book, and it's in Italian. But you don't speak Italian. And then I get mad at you because you don't speak Italian, and I didn't know that, but I gave you a book in Italian anyway, right? These are our problems. These are things that we should be taking care of ahead of time. We need to consider our audience. I'll give you guys a little inside info here into my daily life. This is an actual slide that we showed our salespeople at Highland. Is it accurate? I mean, yeah, kind of. It's accurate enough. Is it good enough for salespeople, though? Hell yes, it is. I mean, is there a lot more going on behind the scenes here? Yeah, there absolutely is. Did I tell them, though, that these two algorithms are different things? No, I didn't mention that one. Do you think I told them that maybe these keys are not the same key, maybe they're different keys depending on which algorithm we're using, which style? No, I didn't mention any of that, because they didn't need to know it. But everyone in that room walked away with an understanding of what the difference between these two terms was. Here's another one. Again, this is a native feature in our application. You guys in the back definitely can't see this, but this is the plain text file. This is what it looks like when it's encrypted. It's full of unreadable characters. We had our salespeople selling this encryption technology, but they didn't understand it. We told them data that's encrypted is protected, it's unreadable, but they didn't know what any of that meant. So anytime anybody would ask a question, they would kind of be stumbling on it. Again, do you think when I was explaining encrypted disk groups to them that I told them what algorithm it is that we're using to encrypt this data, or which mode everything is in, or which file goes through first, and how this... No, none of that got discussed. All that's important for these people was that this is what it looks like. You can read all of the data in here. This is what it looks like post-encryption. You can't read anything in here, therefore it's protected. That was enough. We had to figure out what our goal was for these salespeople. We had to figure out exactly what it is we wanted to tell them, and then stop. I think that's a problem that we run into a lot. We might actually get our point across. We say, hey, here's this awesome technology. This is how it works. Isn't that cool? Sweet. Now let me tell you way too much about it. Right? They don't care. They turned off. And after they turn off, maybe they've forgotten your main point, or it's gotten lost in the extra information. It's something we have to take care of. Make sure you're only answering questions that you're actually asked. One more slide. I want to show this one just because I'm particularly proud of this one. This man right here in the blue hoodie, he designed this slide. I'm particularly proud of it because I've never seen anybody else be able to describe cross-site request forgery in a single slide before. I hesitate to call Kevin a rock star now after Kris's talk, but we're all quite proud of this. This single slide was used to explain cross-site request forgery to a group of people who had never heard those words before they walked in this room, right? And again, is there more going on behind the scenes? Is there more complex things happening here? Do we talk about the browser relationship? What's happening, at the actual level of the code? We didn't talk about any of that because it wasn't necessary for what we were trying to get across. Now, we were dealing with technical people, so we knew their background a little bit. We were able to say they know what a server is, they know what a client is, they know basically how they communicate, they know the possibilities behind social engineering. So we could skip all of that, but we could stay at their level of understanding and explain stuff that they never had access to before. Figuring out what your goal is the most important piece of this. When we were doing the sales thing, we were trying to get our salespeople to stop saying that we were encrypting passwords in our database when we were hashing them. That was our only goal. So we walked through the tiny bit of information that they needed to do to accomplish that goal. Again, they needed to know what we meant when we said, if your encrypted data is stolen, it's still protected. We've told them that line over and over again, but they weren't intuiting it. They didn't understand how that was possible. If someone had your data, surely they could use it. We showed them just with a simple slide. And that was it. When we got to the end of that, we stopped. Our training for sales was only 15 minutes long, I think. There's no reason to fill an entire hour or half hour just because you think you should. Get the data across that they need. Make yourself available for questions, but don't go beyond that if you don't need to. All right. Number 4. You are a terrible speaker, yet you expect your audience to listen. Raise your hand if you think you're a bad public speaker. Yeah? Yeah? Honestly, I understand. I don't think I'm a master speaker myself. You guys can judge for yourselves right now. But if you've decided that speaking skills aren't important to your job, that you don't really need it, then you honestly have no excuse for that. You're just flat out wrong. If you've decided that you're okay with not being a good speaker, you've decided that you're okay with being a mediocre InfoSec professional. Just full stop. The good news is that most people do know when their speaking skills are bad. The problem is that too many people accept that as part of their personality. They say, well, I'm just not a good speaker. I'm not good in front of people. I get nervous, or I don't know what I would say. And they kind of just leave it at that. This is what I say to that, though. I pulled this off of the Cuyahoga County security website. It shows pretty much every security organization just in the Northeast Ohio. This is just, there he is. So this is pretty much every just security organization just in Northeast Ohio. And let me tell you something. They're all looking for speakers. I help run this one pretty well. I help run this one. And let me tell you, the hardest part of running these things is finding speakers. And we are not as picky as you all think we are. If you don't think you're a good speaker, reach out to any one of these organizations and tell them that you'd like to come get some practice. They'll be more than happy to help you out. We'll probably even help you find a topic if you're not sure what to talk about. Honestly, it doesn't have to be a full 45-minute talk. It can be 5 minutes. I know NeoISF has that policy. ClevelandSec has that policy. I'm sure the other organizations would not have any problems with shorter talks. Even if it's just, hey, I've been trying to learn this tool. Here's what I've learned so far, and here's my roadblocks. I'm not sure how to get past that point. If you can fill 5 minutes with that, don't even need PowerPoint slides if you don't want to do that, then that's more practice than you had before, and you can slowly work your way up. And I guarantee there'll be people pulling you aside later saying, yeah, I had that same problem, or I'm also working with that tool. Hey, it was really cool what you showed. I didn't know some of these things. Or, hey, I actually solved that problem, here's how you do it. There's all kinds of possibilities behind it. If you don't want to do that, there's other methods. I used to be, I mean, you can argue about my public speaking skills now, but I used to be absolutely terrible. Just the thought of having to give some sort of speech would get me shaking. My voice would shake, my hands would shake, I could barely hold a microphone. It was just, I couldn't do it. I had to get up by leading meetings. This is the main thing that helped me get comfortable in front of crowds. It got to the point where I knew that if I didn't lead certain initiatives, if I didn't push these things forward, they were never going to get done. So I kind of had to take the lead on these things. And yeah, I was super uncomfortable at the beginning, and people made me nervous, and I was afraid I was going to say something wrong, and someone was going to call me out on it. But, I mean, that's how it goes. If you don't want to do that, or don't think you can, or you think your organization won't allow it for whatever reason, or you just don't have a reason to, there's Toastmasters. I've never been to Toastmasters, but I heard nothing but good things. And Dave's been a Toastmasters, certified Toastmaster. I'm assuming there's a local chapter then you can check out.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
They are everywhere. Check them out. This is their goal. They'll help you through these kind of things. Find your voice. That's what's important. We don't all have the same speaking style. We don't all have the same presentation style. You have to figure out what works for you, what gets you through times, what gets your information out into the world. It's definitely going to take you out of your comfort zone, but you know what? You work in InfoSec. Like, you guys live outside of your comfort zone, so this is just an extension of that. Number 5, your slides are ridiculous, but you expect comprehension from your audience. Guys, for real, your slides are so bad. I can't even tell you. I've got some examples here. Not all of them, but quite a few. InfoSec actually tends to be above the grade when it comes to slides, but got some guidelines anyway to walk into. So, first definite no-no is walls of text. My favorite thing about this is everyone knows that this is bad. The presenter will put this thing up, and they'll usually say, like, I'm not going to read this to you, but, like, look at this, or you can read this later, or I'm not going to make you guys read all that, and then I'm going to say a summary. Well, then, don't put it on the slide. You're wasting everyone's time. The only reason that you should ever put a wall of text like this on a slide is if you're making fun of something that is so incredibly long that you guys can point to it and say, look how stupidly long this thing is. Isn't it ridiculous? Look how small the text is. And even then, you shouldn't be able to read any of the text, because if the audience can read the text, few people in the audience are going to start reading it, and they're going to stop listening to what you're saying. And they're going to get angry when you make fun of it. And then, I did not read it. And then you're going to flip past the slide before people finish reading. It's not a good time. Next problem, bullets. This, I know how boring this looks, guys. Just stay with me for a minute. Like, this is the slide. This is not the slide. Just keep up. This is, I hesitate to call this a slide, though. This is a fucking document. It has 4 levels of bullets on it. Who is this serving? What all this screams to me, if you are presenting something like this, is that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know your stuff because you need every bit of it on the slide. The only time this is excusable is when you are not presenting these, but handing them out as a, hey, everyone should read these. And in that case, make it a document. Don't put it in a PowerPoint. There's no reason to go this deep. Oh, and bonus is this awesome title at the top that's like 15 words long. What information is that adding? Who is that helping in the audience? If that title was gone, would this slide be any less comprehensible? I don't think so. You can see this logo down here. This is a slide from Boeing, so even big companies don't have people that do this kind of thing right. Here's another example. Not only does it have a wall of text embedded in several bullets, but the colors are such that you can barely read what's actually happening here. You have a white background with white text. It's got a little drop shadow, but whatever. This slide is completely useless to everyone, right? You're not going to read it. The presenter's not going to read it. He wasted how much time making it, and it's not giving any value out to anybody. So these are things you definitely want to avoid. So what are some things you want to work towards? Super simple. Big words. Put some big words on your slides. If you are going to put words on your slides, they should be big. Big that everyone in the back can read. Can you guys read these words right here on the slide? Yeah, awesome. All the way back there. Make people focus on your main point. When they're not reading walls of text on your slides, they're listening to you talk. Keep it up here. So if their attention does go back up here, all they get is your main point again. Stops you from putting in too many words. Also, if your font is too big, you can't put a wall of text in. It's just not physically possible. Next, pictures. Guys, do you know how many pictures there are on the internet? Look at this. You got cool pictures right here, nature pictures, animal pictures, puppies. Like, I don't understand why people stop using so many pictures. Like, there are so many pictures out there. Get a little clever. Find a image to illustrate your point and put it up there. PowerPoint is visual aids. PowerPoint replaced the day when we printed out pictures, or you can go back to transparency, but I'm going back even before that. PowerPoints are now a given, but they are built as a visual aid for what you're saying. They shouldn't be a script. Now, if you're a little caveat, if you're going to sell these slides or you're going to use them for something super official, hit search tools if you're on Google and make sure you're using something labeled for reuse. Don't be an asshole. Don't steal people's stuff. But since this is going nowhere and I'm not getting paid for it, I'm going to use images I probably shouldn't. All right, we're going to go a little meta now. I know a lot of tech people that are actually kind of scared of PowerPoint, but PowerPoint is not that hard, guys. This is actually a screenshot that I took while making this presentation, so little inception here. But what you can see here is the notes that I used on the last slide. This says pictures. Do you guys know how many fucking pictures are on the internet? So many. Right? Just a couple bullet points here, though. I don't have a script up here. I did make that mistake one time. If you put a script in here, if you script out every word that you're going to say, you will mess up. Because all you'll do is get paranoid about making sure you said every word properly, that you conveyed all the ideas that you meant to convey. All you have to do is put little blurbs here to remind you of the point you're trying to make, like you would on note cards in school. You won't lose your place because there's so few things up there. And just use presenter mode. Does anybody not know what presenter mode is for PowerPoint? I hope you do. Presenter mode is a godsend. If you're not using it, you definitely should be. It puts the slide up here, and right here are your notes. It works in Keynote also, apparently. I'm borrowing today. I'm sure it works in, what's the one for OpenOffice? Whatever, that one too. I'm sure it's the same thing. The one problem here, though, it really shouldn't be a problem, is that you do have to know what you're talking about. Because if you have only little reminders up here, they won't guide you through the entire presentation. They won't give you information you didn't have previously. You need to understand, you need to know your shit before you present it this way. So when I made this PowerPoint, it actually was a lot fancier, but then I backed off to kind of prove a point. Everything in this presentation was done with the PowerPoint defaults. I didn't change fonts, I didn't change colors, I didn't change anything. These are all things that come loaded in PowerPoint. I don't know shit about color and design. I'm terrible about that kind of thing. But guess what? Microsoft employs people that do use their stuff, right? They spent time trying to figure out what looks good. Just go ahead and use it. Big one. Add borders to your pictures. This is such a simple thing. You can put exactly tenths of a pixel about how big you want it, colors and whatnot. But if you don't want to mess with all that, all I did for every picture in this presentation, this button here that has the border on it. Look how different these two pictures up here look. Look how much more professional this one over here looks than this one. And all it is just a simple border being added on. Just makes your design look more clean, makes everything look more polished. Looks like you actually spent some time on it as opposed to kind of just throwing stuff up there. Next is this here. Use the guides. Design with math. Right? Like I said, I'm terrible with colors, pictures. It's not how my mind works. But you can put these guides in, things will snap into place, you can put them halfway, you can space them evenly, you can just pull up and calculate by the pixel how far apart things need to be. Design with math, that makes it easier for you. Excuse me. I'm not sure how well the other platforms work for this, but I know that PowerPoint, great secret is the selection pane. go ahead and find this and enable it on your PowerPoint system. It lets you control each element on a slide as though it were like a layer in Photoshop. So you can kind of drag things above and below, hide them, all kinds of stuff. Gives you an immense amount of control. I didn't even know about it until about a year ago, but highly powerful. I suggest you look into it. Number 6, you rely on computer-based training and then you wonder why your compliance is low. This one should be kind of obvious, but given how prevalent it is, I guess not. Think about the last round of computer-based training you or your organization forced you to complete, especially when you didn't care about the content. Yeah, exactly. This is, come on. This is what happened, right? You treat it exactly like this. You scroll to the end, next, yes, agree, fine. Why'd you do that? Because the people who put this together didn't care enough to get you quality content. They didn't care enough to put information together that mattered to you as a person. The box gets checked, you didn't learn anything, but the world keeps on spinning because they get to say, yeah, we got 80% of the people to follow through with this thing. Is that what we want for our systems, our training? I don't think so. It can be a tool. CBT can be a great tool if you use it properly, but it definitely shouldn't be the only piece of the puzzle. It's generic, it's lazy, and going back to the first point, it shows that you don't care. Number 7, your content isn't relatable, yet you expect these people to apply this stuff in the real world. You have to know what your goal is before you start this training. That's what we talked about before. So when you are training different groups, the CBT especially will push the same training out to everyone. Do your developers need to know the same thing that your salespeople need to know? No, they don't. Can they even apply the same things to their daily jobs? Probably not. Going back to this example, this is something we presented to our QA and dev staff. They need to know how this exploit worked so that they could defend against it and so that the QA people could exploit it properly to show the developers when we've gone wrong. I think this is cool. I think CSRF is a cool exploit, cool vulnerability. A lot of our people in the R&D department thought it was cool, but do we need to show it to everyone just because we think it's cool? What do you think would happen if we showed this slide to someone in sales? Go right over that. They don't even understand the interaction between a client and a server, most likely. How are they going to understand everything else that's happening? It's not relevant to their jobs. It's not relevant to their technical experience. It doesn't make sense to show it to them. Let's see. So, if I was going to give training to our receptionists, say, this is the kind of thing I would give them, right? I wouldn't put them through OWASP Top 10 CBT training. I would give them this book that kind of reads like a dime store romance novel. It's got story after story about ways that people have blown past receptionists and gotten them fired, right? This book costs, what, $10 on Amazon? Pull some down, give them to your receptionists. You have to tailor these trainings to each role. That's a big piece of the Microsoft SDL, if you follow that at all. The first phase is training, and they talk about you need to make sure that everything is tailored to the role. You need to, if you want to achieve a shift in security culture in your organization, you need to make sure that everyone at every level can apply it to their daily jobs. And there's no quicker way to lose your audience than to show them things that aren't relevant to them, to kind of show something that they clearly know is meant for another department, but was kind of pushed to them anyway as part of a bulk list. Number 8, you don't test and repeat, but you expect attention and retention. If you have never started a security education program, I'm going to tell you right now, your first iteration is going to be horrible. You might not think it at the time. We didn't. We thought it was awesome. We thought we were kicking ass with our system. But now looking back, all we do is cringe like, oh God, we did that. That was stupid. Why would we do that? It was a complete waste of time. You're going to do the same thing, and it's fine. It's part of the process. You have to. You have to be iterating through these things. You got to get yourself some metrics. Find how you should measure success in your organization. Show how you should measure success of your program. And then take a step back and analyze it. Are we meeting all of our goals? How many users we got to sign this document is not a good metric, by the way. You want to measure things that show actual effectiveness and real-world application in your organization. If you work with network security, there are at least half a dozen books written on metrics that you can use in your organization. You can talk to Mr. Jack Nicholson back there who's not paying attention at all. He'll give you some great ideas on metrics. If you work in application security, is a little more difficult. No books for you. We think we found a couple ways. You can come talk to me afterwards if you're interested in that. But that's not what we're talking about here. So test, gather your metrics, make a single change, make something that you can track, and then run your metrics again. See how we've improved the process. Have we improved it? Have we made it worse? Have we increased retention in some areas and not others? If you're really ambitious, you can run A/B testing. A/B testing is essentially its most simplified form, giving one program to one group and another to another group and finding out which one tests better and then comparing the results. It's much more complex than that, but you can look into it if you're interested, and kind of ambitious because it can get complicated quickly. Another thing that most people don't think about, reach out to your marketing team. You need their attention anyway. You need them to kind of comply to this stuff just like anybody else in the organization. And I bet you they have a ton of tracking software, of metrics gathering tools that maybe they'll let you use if you're nice enough to them. So reach out and see what they can offer you. Number 9. You treat your training too much like work, yet you expect your audience to sit consciously through your entire talk. How many different mandated training processes do you guys have to go through every year? You guys, you have sexual harassment training, you have to sit through the IT policy, you have to talk about acceptable use of computers. How many times are people dragged into an auditorium or have to listen to some recording or watch some training or sign some document every year? Like, at least half a dozen in our organization. I'm sure it gets worse and more bureaucratic as you get. The last thing you want to be is another one of those pieces. You don't want to be just another, oh, here's a sexual harassment thing, I'm going to sign that. Oh, here's a security policy, I'm going to sign that too. You want to be operating on a different level. So you have to stop treating it so much like work. Why do we operate so differently? I hope Jason Street doesn't mind me putting his picture up here, but it fits perfectly. Here's, Hacker Conference DEF CON Jason Street, and over here is his button-down suit self. He probably doesn't have the same problem that some people do, but like, you have to bring the same passion and articulation about these subjects that you bring to the hacker conferences, that you bring to NeoISF, that you bring to CleveSec. You have to bring that back to your organization. This is a screenshot of Ben 10's Call of Community talk. If you've never seen that, definitely take a look. I've tried to pull a GIF, but it didn't quite work out. I wish you could see how animated he is. He's jumping around the stage. He's screaming at the audience. He's pointing at them. Does he do that at work? Maybe. Probably he does. He probably does. But do you? Probably not, right? Why? Why can we show this level of emotion here, but when we go back to work, we're all of a sudden, let's button back down, let's get to work, let's talk quietly into the microphone for exactly 42 minutes so everyone can get back to their desk. There's no reason for it. This is a slide that that Marian and I had a presentation at. Horrible presentation looking back at it. This is the kind of thing that we were like, yeah, this is great at the time, and now we look back and we're like, why would we do that? That was the worst. But we were going to show this we showed this to a technical audience. Our education director told us to yank this slide. They were like, no one's going to get this reference. This old guy you have up here, no one's going to get it. But we left it in. Do you think there was a single person in the technical audience that didn't get that Theoden reference? No, every one of them got it. But how often does that kind of thing happen at work? Pretty rarely. Why? We include jokes in our presentations here. We get lighthearted with it. We put them in analogies that go back to pop culture so that they remember these things. Why not take this back to work? Best way to get people to get involved is to reach out, get lighthearted with them, have a nice multicultural handshake with them, and learn what's important in their world. We all have our jokes here in InfoSec. We know what the jokes are. We know what the tropes are. Every group has those. Find out what they are and play to those. Play to the strengths. Get the people in the room laughing. If you pull an InfoSec joke, salespeople aren't probably going to get it. But I'm sure they have just as many tropes and things that they find funny, so why not put them to use? Getting to know these people and making sure everything works in their world will always get you more response. Information coming from a friend or at least someone that they know will always be more well received than kind of just some mandated corporate security presentation. I guess the security guys are doing it, but they don't even know who you are. The last one, and I believe the most important, is you don't convey the cool. And what's wrong with you? Like, why did you get into this job? Because you thought it was cool, right? Everyone got in this job because they thought it was cool. This dude saw hackers and was like, yeah, I'm going to wear rollerblades and go to work, for sure. right? Like, we all got into this job because we thought, so why can't we convey that to everybody else? Why do they think it's boring? There's no excuse for this kind of thing. Think about being in a bar and someone that you've never met asks you what you do. And if you go, well, I work in computers and security and whatever, they'll be like, oh, my brother works in computers. He's at help desk, whatever. Now you're completely off track, right? You're never going to get back to that cool conversation. But you can jump in with, oh, I'm a hacker, and they're going to be like, what, like on the news? You're like, no, I'm a good guy, though. Now you have a conversation going about cool things that you can share, not just like generic, or computer stuff. Turn your people into hackers, or what they think a hacker is anyway. It doesn't have to be accurate, right? We know this is a caricature. They don't. A great event we had at work recently, we called Security Week. We brought them in, and we gave a few presentations, but then we went off, go to the booths and check things out, and they were cracking passwords on their own. This guy here taught them how to use Hashcat, right? We were teaching them how to use SQL Map to pull things from a database. All they were doing really was pasting commands in and hitting enter, but do you think that was any less of an experience for them? Absolutely not. They went home and they were like, I'm a hacker. You should have seen the cool stuff I was pulling from work. It's crazy. It doesn't matter. They're interested now, right? That's all we care about, so why are we so hung up on making sure everything is accurate? Another thing that we did that was also very effective was we have to work on teaching our people how to be secure at home. If they're not getting how this stuff is relatable to their job, make it so that it's relatable to them at home. Talk about scams on Facebook. They've all seen that. Talk about phishing emails. They've all seen these. Teach them in the context of this is what will keep you safe at home, and they'll bring those habits back to work. Right? They won't turn these things off when they come back to work. So that's all I have. If you know me online, that's the picture you know me by, Turtle. My name's Kris. There's my email address and Twitter. That's all I have. Hope to talk to you guys about some of this stuff. Thank you.